The Moonshadow Pack's kitchen had never felt so suffocating. Arya wiped flour from her hands, the scent of fresh bread mingling with the crisp autumn air drifting through the open window. She'd taken this job out of desperation, a human woman with nowhere else to go, hired to cook for a pack that barely acknowledged her existence. "More stew for the warriors," barked Marcus, the pack's steward, his eyes never quite meeting hers. "And make sure it's ready before moonrise." She nodded, keeping her head down as she always did. In the 3 weeks since she'd arrived at the Packlands, Arya had learned the unspoken rules. Stay invisible, speak only when spoken to, and never ever look the wolves directly in the eye. But there was one wolf who made those rules impossible to follow. He came to the kitchen every evening, always alone, always silent. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell across storm-grey eyes, he would sit at the corner table near the hearth and wait. No words, no demands. Just a patient, unsettling presence that made her heart race for reasons she couldn't name. The other kitchen staff called him the Silent One, and hurried away whenever he appeared. They whispered that he was damaged somehow, a warrior who'd lost his voice in battle, relegated to the margins of pack life. Arya felt a kinship with that isolation, so she always made sure his portion was generous, seasoned with care. Tonight, as the kitchen emptied and the pack gathered for their evening run, he appeared again. Arya's hands trembled slightly as she ladled stew into a carved wooden bowl, the nicest one she could find. She set it before him along with crusty bread still warm from the oven. "I added rosemary tonight," she said softly, more to fill the silence than anything else. "I hope you like it." Those grey eyes lifted to meet hers, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. There was something ancient in that gaze, something that spoke of power held carefully in check. He inclined his head, a gesture so small yet so deliberate it felt like a gift. Arya found herself smiling despite the loneliness that had become her constant companion. "You're welcome," she whispered, even though he hadn't thanked her aloud. She turned back to her work, scrubbing pots as the sound of his careful eating filled the quiet kitchen. She didn't notice the way his eyes followed her movements, or how his jaw tightened when Marcus's voice echoed from the hallway, sharp and dismissive as always. What Arya couldn't know, what no one had told her, was that the Silent One wasn't damaged or forgotten. He was Kale Moonshadow, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and he'd been watching her since the moment she'd arrived at his Packlands. He'd chosen silence not from necessity, but from fascination, observing the human woman who cooked with such care, who smiled despite her obvious fear, who treated even the lowest pack members with quiet dignity. And tonight, as he tasted the rosemary she'd added just for him, Kyle made a decision that would change everything. Part 2. When the Moon Reveals Truth. The lunar gathering was the most important ceremony of the season, when all pack members assembled under the full moon to reaffirm their bonds and witness the Alpha's blessing. Arya had been ordered to prepare the feast, an honor, Marcus said, though his tone suggested it was more punishment than privilege. For 3 days, she'd worked until her hands blistered, preparing dishes she'd never seen before from recipes the elder wolves grudgingly shared. Game roasted with wild herbs, root vegetables glazed with honey, bread braided in patterns that supposedly honored the moon goddess. She didn't understand their traditions, but she poured everything she had into the work anyway. It was all she had to offer. The Silent One had come every evening during those 3 days, watching her work with that intense, unwavering attention. On the final night, as exhaustion made her sway on her feet, he'd done something unexpected. He'd stood, walked to where she struggled with a heavy pot and lifted it effortlessly to the hearth. Their hands had brushed in the exchange. The touch had sent electricity racing up her arm, and she'd gasped, jerking back. He'd frozen, those grey eyes searching her face with an expression she couldn't decipher. Then he'd returned to his corner without a word, though something had shifted in the air between them. Now, as the moon rose full and silver over the gathering grounds, Arya stood at the edge of the crowd, watching pack members celebrate in ways she couldn't participate in. They were beautiful in their joy, wild and free, their wolves so close to the surface that their eyes gleamed with amber light. She felt more alone than ever. "You there, human," a female voice cut through her thoughts. Arya turned to find a stunning she-wolf approaching, her auburn hair cascading over bare shoulders, her dress shimmering like starlight. "The Alpha requires more wine. Fetch it." Arya nodded quickly. "Of course, right away." She hurried toward the storage cellars, grateful for a task that removed her from the festivities. The underground passages were cool and dark, lit only by scattered torches. She was reaching for a wine cask when she heard footsteps behind her. "You shouldn't be down here alone." The voice made her spin around. The Silent One stood at the base of the stairs, his presence filling the narrow space. But something was different. He moved with unmistakable authority. And when he stepped into the torchlight, Arya saw what she'd been too blind to notice before. The silver insignia at his throat, the way even the shadows seemed to bend toward him. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I was just getting wine for—" She faltered. "For the Alpha." His lips curved into the smallest smile. "Were you?" Then he spoke, and his voice was like thunder rolling across distant mountains, deep, commanding, achingly beautiful. "Do you know who I am, Arya?" Her name on his lips made her knees weak. "You're the Silent One?" "I am Kale Moonshadow." He stepped closer, and she could smell pine and winter storms on his skin. "Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and I have been anything but silent in my thoughts of you." The world tilted. Arya grabbed the wall for support, her mind racing. The Alpha King. She'd been serving the Alpha King, talking to him like he was just another lonely soul in need of comfort. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to know the woman who cooks with such care, who smiles at broken things, who doesn't flinch from silence." His hand rose, hovering near her cheek but not quite touching. "I wanted you to see me without the crown and the fear it brings. I should have known. I should have—" She was babbling now, panic rising. "You should have nothing," his voice gentled. "You owe me nothing, Arya, but I find myself wanting to offer you everything." Above them, the ceremony continued, drums beating in rhythm with the pack's collective heartbeat. But down here in the torchlit shadows, there was only the space between them, charged and crackling with possibility. "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "I'm human, I'm nobody." Kale's eyes flashed with something fierce. "You are the woman who made me remember what it means to anticipate someone's presence, who made me want to break my own silence." He finally closed the distance, his fingers brushing her jaw with devastating gentleness. "In 3 weeks. You've done what decades of pack politics couldn't. You've made me feel seen." Arya's breath caught. She should be terrified. She should run. But all she could think about was the careful way he'd lifted that pot, the patience in his silence, the loneliness she'd recognized in his eyes. "I don't belong in your world," she said, even as she leaned into his touch. "Then I will build a world where you do." The promise hung between them, impossible and intoxicating, and when the drums above reached their crescendo, calling the Alpha King back to his people, Kale Moonshadow made a choice that would shake the foundations of pack law. He pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture of intimacy that among wolves meant everything, and whispered, "Come with me. Let them see what I've known since the moment you offered me bread and kindness. Let them see their queen." Part 3. The crown she never sought. The gathering fell silent when Kyle emerged from the cellars, with Arya's hand clasped firmly in his. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them, glowing with wolf-light under the full moon. Arya felt their shock ripple through the crowd like a physical force. "Impossible," someone breathed. Marcus, the steward, pushed forward, his face twisted with disbelief. "Alpha King, surely you're not— She's human!" Kyle's voice carried across the grounds with absolute authority. "She is under my protection. Any who challenge that challenge me." The crowd erupted. Wolves murmured and snarled, their confusion palpable. The auburn-haired she-wolf from earlier stepped forward, her beauty now sharp as a blade. "My king, I am Selene of the High Ridge Pack, daughter of Alpha Roderick. We have an understanding." Her voice dripped with barely contained rage. "You cannot set me aside for a kitchen servant." "I made you no promises, Selene. Kyle's tone was ice. "Your father's ambitions are not my responsibility. But tradition demands, I am the tradition." The words cracked through the night like lightning. Every wolf dropped their gaze except Celine, who stared with hatred burning in her amber eyes. "And I say that Arya has proven herself worthy of a place in this pack." Arya wanted to disappear. She could feel the weight of their judgment, their resentment. She was an outsider being elevated above wolves who'd spent lifetimes earning their positions. It wasn't fair to them, and it wasn't fair to her. "Kyle," she whispered, tugging at his hand. "This is wrong. I can't—" He turned to her, and the tenderness in his expression made her heart ache. "You can, and you will, because I will stand beside you through every moment of doubt." Elder Morna, ancient and grey-furred, stepped forward from the council circle. "Alpha King, your choice is your right, but the human must prove herself. Pack law demands a trial of worth." "Name it," Kyle said immediately. 3 tests, over 3 moon cycles. She must demonstrate knowledge of our ways, strength of spirit, and sacrifice for the pack's good." Morna's eyes, though weathered, were not unkind as they fixed on Arya. "If she succeeds, none may question her place among us." Arya's throat tightened. 3 months of trials under the scrutiny of wolves who already resented her. But when she looked at Kyle, at the Alpha King who'd chosen to break his silence for her, she found courage she didn't know she possessed. "I accept," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The next months tested Arya in ways she'd never imagined. Elder Morna became her teacher, drilling her in pack history, hierarchy and customs. She learned the sacred songs sung during hunts, the proper way to address visiting alphas, the intricate meanings behind moon rituals. But knowledge wasn't enough. For the strength test, she was sent into the wilderness for 3 days, with nothing but a knife and her wits. She returned frostbitten and exhausted but triumphant, carrying herbs the pack's healer desperately needed. Through it all, Kale was her constant. He couldn't interfere with the trials. Pack law forbade it, but he found other ways to support her. Morning runs where they didn't speak, but simply existed side by side. Evening meals in his private chambers, where he listened to her fears and frustrations. Stolen moments in the garden, where his touch reminded her why she endured. "You're stronger than half my warriors," he told her one night as they sat beneath the stars. His fingers traced patterns on her palm, a wolf's courtship gesture she now understood. "They just don't want to admit it. Celine certainly doesn't." Arya sighed. The she-wolf had made herself a constant obstacle, questioning every answer Arya gave, spreading whispers that the Alpha King was bewitched. Kyle's jaw tightened. "Celine is bitter that I won't trade genuine connection for political alliance. Ignore her poison." But the final test made ignoring impossible. For the sacrifice trial, Arya had to prove she would put pack welfare above her own desires. Elder Morna presented her with a choice. The pack's winter stores had been damaged by flooding, and they needed funds desperately. Arya could give up her one valuable possession, a locket containing a painting of her deceased mother, the only family keepsake she owned, to be sold, or she could suggest an alternative sacrifice of equal worth. Celine stood among the council, smirking. What will the human choose? Her comfort or our survival? Arya clutched the locket, memories flooding through her. Her mother's smile, the songs she'd sung, the love that had sustained Arya through years of loneliness. Giving it up felt like losing her mother all over again. But she thought of the pack members who'd begun to accept her, the young wolves who now greeted her shyly, the elder who'd shown her how to braid ceremonial bread, even the warriors who'd stopped glaring and started nodding. They were becoming her family too. "Take it," she said, placing the locket in Elder Morna's weathered hand. "Use it for whatever the pack needs most." The silence that followed was different from before, softer, contemplative. Even Celine looked shaken. Elder Morna opened the locket, studied the painting within, then closed it with careful reverence. "You would give up your only connection to your bloodline for wolves you've known mere months." "Family isn't just blood," Arya said quietly. "It's the people who see you, who challenge you to grow, who stand beside you when you're terrified." Her eyes found Kale's across the circle. "The pack has given me that. This is the least I can offer in return. Morna's expression softened. The trials are complete. The human has proven her worth thricefold. She turned to the assembled pack. Who stands in witness? I stand witness, Kyle said immediately, pride radiating from every word. One by one, pack members stepped forward, warriors, elders, even some of Seleni's former supporters. Their voices created a chorus of acceptance that made tears stream down Arya's face. When the ceremony ended, Elder Morna did something unexpected. She pressed the locket back into Arya's hands. We don't need your treasures, child. We needed to know you would offer them. That is the heart of a true pack member, and of a queen. That night, under the moon that had witnessed her trials, Ahail led Arya to the sacred grove, where Alpha Kings had claimed their mates for generations. He cupped her face between his hands, his touch reverent. You never needed to prove anything to me, he said. But watching you prove it to yourself, that was worth every moment of restraint. I'm still human, she whispered. I'll never be able to shift, to run with you under the moon. He silenced her with a kiss that tasted of promises and future. When he pulled back, his eyes gleamed with wolf-light. You are my mate, Arya, my queen. And you will teach our pack. That strength comes in many forms, that sometimes the bravest wolf is the one who faces the pack without fangs or claws, armed only with courage and compassion. As he claimed her under the watchful moon, Arya finally understood. She hadn't just found acceptance in the pack, she'd found home, and the silent king who'd waited patiently in her kitchen had become her voice, her strength, her everything. Part 4. The Queen the Pack Deserved. 6 months after the trials, Moonshadow territory thrived under a new kind of leadership. Arya hadn't replaced tradition, she'd expanded it, showing the pack that there was strength in embracing those who were different. She established a sanctuary for lone wolves and displaced pack members, offering shelter and purpose to those the rigid hierarchy had cast aside. She convinced Kale to open trade negotiations with human settlements, creating prosperity that benefited everyone. And she trained other humans interested in pack life, building bridges between two worlds that had existed in mutual suspicion for generations. The pack had grown to love her for it. Even Selene had eventually approached with grudging respect, admitting that Arya's reforms had saved her younger brother, a wolf who couldn't shift properly and had faced exile under the old laws. You're changing everything, Selene said one afternoon as they worked together in the expanded kitchens, now a bustling center of pack life. I hated you for it at first. I think I hated that you made it look easy when I'd been fighting for recognition my whole life. Arya paused in kneading dough. It wasn't easy. I was terrified every single day. But you did it anyway. Selene's expression was complex, part admiration, part lingering envy. That's what makes you worthy of him. Kyle needed someone who'd challenge the pack to be better, not someone who'd simply maintain what already existed. Later, as the sun set over the packlands, Arya stood on the balcony of the Alpha's residence, her residence now, and watched wolves gather for the evening run. Kale came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. Thinking deep thoughts, my queen. She leaned into his warmth. Thinking about how strange life is. 6 months ago, I was a desperate woman taking a job cooking for strangers. Now you're the heart of this pack, he finished. The woman who taught an Alpha King that silence could be broken, that tradition could be honored while still evolving, that love doesn't require fangs to have teeth. She turned in his arms, studying the face she'd come to know so well. Do you ever regret it? Choosing me when you could have had someone who fit seamlessly into your world? Every day, he said, and when she flinched, he smiled. Every day I wake up grateful that I didn't settle for seamless, that I waited for you, the woman who saw a lonely wolf in a corner and decided to offer him kindness without knowing who he was. His hand moved to rest over her heart. You gave me something I didn't know I'd been missing, a partner who chose me for myself, not for my title, someone who makes me want to be worthy of the crown, not just wear it. Kyle, he kissed her softly. No, let me finish. When I first saw you in that kitchen, exhausted and afraid, but still making sure everyone was fed, I knew. The wolf in me recognized its mate before my human mind could catch up. You were always meant to be here, Arya. The universe was just waiting for us both to be ready. Arya felt tears prick her eyes. I love you, even when pack politics make me want to hide in the kitchen again, even when I miss simple things like not having 100 wolves watching my every move. I love you. And I love you. My mate, my queen, my Arya. He pulled her closer, and they stood together as the moon rose, she human and vulnerable, he wolf and powerful, yet both somehow complete in the joining. Below, the pack began their run, their howls rising in harmony, but mixed with the traditional songs was something new, a melody Arya had taught them, a human folk tune about belonging and home, the sound of two worlds blending into something stronger than either alone. Elder Morna approached the balcony, her ancient eyes twinkling. The pack wishes to know if their queen will join the Hunt Council meeting tomorrow. Your perspective on the winter preparations would be valued. I'll be there, Arya promised. After Morna left, Kyle chuckled. A year ago, suggesting a human join the Hunt Council would have caused a riot. Now they request your presence. People can surprise you when you give them the chance, Arya smiled. Even stubborn wolves who pretend to be silent. He caught her hand, pressing it to his lips, a gesture that still made her heart race. Speaking of surprises, I have something for you. He produced a small wooden box, carved with intricate wolf designs. Inside lay a pendant, silver metal shaped like a cooking spoon crossed with a wolf's paw, the symbols of her two identities merged into one beautiful piece. I had it commissioned, Kyle explained. You are both things, Arya, human and pack, cook and queen, vulnerable and strong. You don't have to choose between who you were and who you've become. She clutched the pendant, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of it. It's perfect. As he fastened it around her neck, his lips brushed her ear. You're perfect, and I will spend every day proving to you that the silent king in the corner chose exactly right. They stayed on the balcony long after the pack's run ended, wrapped in each other, and the quiet contentment of two souls who'd found their home. In the distance, cooking fires lit the packlands, and Arya could smell bread baking, the younger wolves using recipes she'd taught them. She'd come here expecting nothing but a job and shelter. Instead, she'd found a family, a purpose, and a love that defied every rule she'd thought governed the world. The Alpha King had chosen his queen not from among wolves bred for power, but from a woman who offered kindness without expecting anything in return. And in doing so, he'd shown his pack that true strength lay not in tradition for tradition's sake, but in the courage to recognize worth wherever it appeared, even in a kitchen, in the hands of a human woman who cooked with care. As the stars emerged overhead, Arya whispered against Kyle's chest, "Thank you for seeing me." His answer was a rumble she felt more than heard. "Thank you for teaching me how to truly see." And under the watchful moon, the silent king and his unlikely queen stood together, proof that sometimes the most powerful love stories begin not with destiny's thunder, but with the quiet act of serving someone a warm meal and a smile.